I'll be speaking with Dan LaBotz. He's editor at New Politics magazine. He's written 10 books, including one that's very timely. It's called The Nicaraguan Revolution, What Went Wrong? A Marxist Analysis. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
So there's an open rebellion in Nicaragua, a lot of violence. One city has declared its independence from the government. How would you describe what's going on?
Well, I would call it a popular rebellion. And I believe that the popular rebellion began because of a number of different sources. But the most important one was the changing in the retirement plan, where benefits were going to be cut and contributions raised, both on employers and on workers. And a group of elderly people who were recipients of such benefits went out to demonstrate. The police manhandled them, roughed them up. Students then came to join them. The student protests grew, and then the police fired on and killed students. And the killing of a number of students led to a massive sense of outrage within Nicaragua. And so I think that's the immediate cause of the popular rebellion.
When did all this happen?
This starts around April 18th, and has been going on now for the last month or more. And it's become it's a truly national rebellion. That is, the rebellion that began in Managua, the capital city, spread to many other Nicaraguan cities. The opposition to the government put up roadblocks throughout the country, 50 or more, that eventually paralyzed all traffic, even trapping hundreds of trucks in Nicaragua that were passing through Central America. And so it became truly national. Many cities and towns have barricades to stop the police. After this happened, the police, together with thugs of the ruling party, the Sandinista Party, the FSLN youth group, has for years had these thugs who go out and beat up opponents of the regime. So I think you should understand that this has been a very authoritarian government for a long time. It has been very conservative in its economic policies, very neoliberal, keeping down wages, stopping the growth of independent unions, doing things to attract foreign capital. So this is a government which has many problems from the point of view of the citizens.
Let's go back then, because you were going to do that before when I interrupted you. But you described the current unrest and violence, and then you wanted to go back and for a lot of people, they remember Daniel Ortega, the leader of the revolution against the Somoza dictatorship, and then Reagan, and then it gets a little fuzzy, and people haven't been paying attention to Nicaragua that much. So how did the revolution go wrong?
Well, I'm one of those people. I went to Nicaragua in 1985 with my wife, my future wife, and a friend, and the three of us took medical equipment to a hospital in Stanley. We traveled throughout the country, welcomed into the huge trucks filled with soldiers going off to fight against the Contras. So I started out as a person who was supportive of the Nicaraguan people, supportive of the Nicaraguan Revolution, and what went wrong was that first, the Contra War made it very, very difficult. That is, the U.S. government, Ronald Reagan, the State Department, the CIA, set up the Contras, a counter-revolutionary force, to fight the Sandinistas. And that made it extremely difficult for the Sandinista government to carry out its program of improving life for the people of Nicaragua. At the same time, they made mistakes that turned this into a civil war as well. That is, in their failure to give land to the peasants, in their awkward handling of relations to the indigenous people, they drove some people into the other camp. Daniel Ortega, who had been elected president in 1985, then stood for election in 1990, lost to Violeta Chamorro. Violeta Chamorro had a political coalition that went from the communists to the conservatives. It collapsed upon her election, and she formed, through her son-in-law, Antonio Lacayo, they formed a partnership with Daniel Ortega and his brother Humberto Ortega. Daniel, the head of the party, Humberto, the head of the army. And that was the beginning of the creation of conservative alliances with the corrupt political, conservative and liberal political parties, with the business classes with whom they entered into economic relationships, and with the conservative Roman Catholic Church of Cardinal Obando y Bravo. So this really was a transformation. And then from then on, they were a force in Nicaraguan politics, but always allied with those forces, corrupt politicians, big business, and the conservative part of the Catholic Church.
Now, what, to give an illustration there, what's the situation with women's rights in Nicaragua? Sandinista, supposedly, Nicaragua.
Well, after Ortega became president in 2006, he and his wife, Rosario Murillo, that they had already, in their campaign for president, they had gotten married in the Catholic Church, they adopted a pro-Catholic position, they came out against abortion rights, and they have the most extreme law on abortion in Nicaragua. And the old Sandinista women's movement broke up, blew away, but women in Nicaragua have organized what's probably the most important, strongest, best social movement. They're a women's movement, a feminist movement that's fighting for women's rights in all areas, but particularly for reproductive rights, including abortion rights. Rosario Murillo, the wife of the president and now the vice president of the country, they have persecuted this women's feminist movement and brought legal cases against it, constantly attack it in the press and harass it. So women's rights have really been under attack under Ortega through the 3 years of his more recent administration, the 3 terms, excuse me.
Now, I don't know how to call it, Stalinist left or the anti-imperialist left, they see the U.S. hand, that the U.S. wants to overthrow Ortega. Why would they want to? It seems like he's doing the kind of things that they would like. The US.
Yeah, in fact, Ortega has had very good relations with the U.S. He's attracted U.S. business by preventing the organization of independent labor unions. And when workers try to organize, they get beaten up by these same people who are beating and attacking the students today. As a result, 54% of trade of Nicaragua is with the U.S., about 8 or 9% with Canada. So Nicaragua has been very attractive to foreign investment. For a long time also, Ortega and the Sandinistas, other governments before them, had relationships with the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Army. The Drug Enforcement Agency operates in the country. So to view him as some anti-imperialist is a mistake. These people that you talk about, who are the axis of resistance kind of people, who are saying, well, this is the U.S. government trying to overthrow the Nicaraguan government. I think this is a genuine popular rebellion. But of course, the U.S. government always attempts to intervene to try to create governments that it can get along with. Maybe they would have liked to keep Ortega. It seems to me that's probably no longer possible. So what's the U.S. government likely to do? They're going to be intervening to see if they can shape events. Their partners in that particularly will be COSEP. COSEP is the business council in Nicaragua. So the U.S. government is going to look to Nicaraguan business interests. Probably they will want to make a transition and preserve the power of the state, that is, the existing army and the existing police, both of which have become implicated in the attacks and murders of people in Nicaragua now.
So what should be the position of the authentic left?
Yeah, I would say not only the authentic left, but the American people. We should have a position of, one, saying we support a popular rebellion in Nicaragua against this authoritarian government, even though it's not likely to lead to an extremely progressive outcome. The likelihood is that there will be a more democratic political system, but still with extremely conservative political forces that may become the new government. But one has to defend the fight for democracy. Secondly, and very, very important, we should be against any U.S. diplomatic or military intervention in Nicaragua. The Nicaraguan people should have an opportunity to shape their own destiny. They're capable of running their own country. They should not have the United States dictating to them. But I would say, thirdly, that those of us in the United States and progressive people around the world should come together to support Nicaragua, the Nicaraguan people in any way we can. Once the violence lessens and once it's possible, we ought to make direct contact with Nicaraguan working people, with workers, farmers, with the students, with the retired people. And we ought to particularly see if we can find any left currents. Nicaragua, the domination of the FSLN, claiming the banner of being the left group, claiming to be socialist, has discredited the notion of socialism. And at the same time, the repressive nature of the regime made it very difficult to construct new critical alternatives politically and intellectually, but also to organize social movements. So that we should be doing everything we can to make it possible for the Nicaraguan people to create their own future in which we can have a left within the alternatives offered to them.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me. There's certainly so much more to get into. Maybe we can do that another time. Thank you, Dan LaBotz, for speaking with me at TSVN.
Nice to be with you. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope to see you again.